So last year, around October, my daughter comes and announces to the entire family that this year, for Halloween, she will be Batman. Not Batgirl, Batman, right? And of course, me and all of my womanist fancy and all my powerful women say, well, what about Superwoman? And she looks me straight in the eye and says, Mom, Superwoman is lame. I want to be Batman. I mean, I kind of can't blame her, right? Batman is pretty cool. Think about it. He gets to get up in the night, travel in his private jet, fly all around Gotham saving people, then come back to his mansion where he can relax as his wonderful company makes plenty of dollars for him as he sits in this global economy, right? I know as a young girl growing up, we didn't really have a lot of female millionaires to look up to that were superheroes. Of course, there was Oprah, right? But outside of that, right, we found ourselves lacking just a little bit. And so for me, it's funny how as much as those images don't exist, I do remember being called Superwoman quite a lot. And I don't really remember when the first time I was called Superwoman was. It might have been when I was around 6 years old and I looked around my church and realized everyone was getting ready for Easter service. And of course, me and all my entrepreneurial spirit said, how can I make money off of this? I remember going to Joann's Fabric and gathering all the ribbon that I can find and making hair bows to adorn all the little girls and fill all of my pockets. It might have been more around the age of 15 or so when I was illegally working for a few organizations under the table, making PowerPoint presentations for all of their major events. But I do remember one of the most recent events. About 2 weeks after I had one of the most complicated cesareans that I've had in my children, I found myself interviewing for the poet laureate position. My newborn child in the car, me unable to stand in the interview because I was in so much pain. Then all my friends labeled me Superwoman. And it started out originally as a compliment, right? I'm amazing. I can do it all. But over time, I started to see it turn into much more toxic language. Superwoman meant I didn't need any help, right? Superwoman meant that sometimes I was left out and pushed away. I remember asking a few of my friends that went out and had this really great event, how come I wasn't included? And they told me they just thought I was too busy saving the world. Somewhat problematic. I started thinking about where do these issues with Superwoman start to enter our lives? And so, in my nerdy nature, I took to Google to figure it out. And I looked up where Superwoman originated. DC actually introduced her in 1943. She was a derivative of Lois Lane. She shows up. She has a dream in which she gets a blood transfusion from Superman and suddenly is adorned with all kinds of superpowers. By 1947, she's appearing again. This time, she's duped by fraudulent merchants who put her in a trance and somehow she gets superpowers. By 1981, she starts to show up as the doting lover of Superman who only gains her powers through a lovely gift he brings in, a plant that cast aside and killed to remove her superpowers from her. I thought it was very interesting and telling what it says about us as women in society and our ability to be successful. One, that we can only be wildly successful in some alternate reality that doesn't really exist. Two, that power can only last for a temporary amount of time. The time it takes to kill a plant, the time it takes to wake up. It seems kind of interesting to me that we are constantly looking for ways to heroize ambitious women without acknowledging that their humanity is still a part of this. And so the biggest problem that I started to see, in addition to the way society looks at it, was that for women like me who were called Superwomen, we actually took to it, right? We started to make it part of our personalities. I found myself adding project after project to my plate, job. I could do it all in my mind until I couldn't, right? A few years ago, I found myself so overloaded with things to do that I found myself with massive internal hemorrhaging laid out on the floor of a friend's bedroom. I was rushed to the emergency room, and the doctors labeled it Crohn's disease. Now, for me, I saw it more as my inability to be deity, because that's what superheroes do, right? Well, a good friend recently reminded me that the inability to be deity doesn't make you weak. It just makes you the best kind of human. And so for me, I started to think about what are the things that I want to say to my daughter? What are the things that I want to say to myself about the ability of women to be strong even when we're not? And I started to reflect on my journey to this point. Of course, for me, I do that through poetry. So I spent a little time with the page. And I started to craft a poem that I felt like was going to celebrate and say all the things that the voices around me weren't saying. It was going to complement my ability to be both sick and strong. It was going to be a tale of how I could take on the world and still be absolutely tired at the end of the day. It was going to celebrate all of my humanness. And I'm getting ready to share it with you in just a moment. But as I do, I want us to think about, is it time, which I think it is, to take the cape off of Superwoman, to start to praise the complexity of a woman without looking at the impossibility that ambition has, right? Isn't it time for us to just embrace ourselves wholly? To think about the fact that a woman who holds multiple projects is successful in the same way a woman who focuses on the excellence of simplicity is. Neither better or worse, both just successful in different ways. So for us, I wanted to make sure that I took time to praise that. And in crafting this poem, I thought of it as the poem that I wanted to hear myself say, not necessarily the truth. And I feel like sometimes as artists, we need that, right? We need to say things until they become truthful. We kind of need to be the proclaimers of the things that we want to happen and the change we want to see. And so I hope that as you listen to this poem, you consider the things and the change that we want to see around us and the ways that we want to go about redefining femininity, strength, and success. After sickness had its way with me, stripped me of 80 pounds over 4 months, left Crohn's disease in my gut like a famished tapeworm, after my body learned dual rejection, the inflammation of weight gain, the excommunication of my entrails from the chapel of myself, after 8 years of cringing, bracing myself for when the next episode would twist my truths into a bloody, bloated mess, a toilet too far away, a soiled sheet hidden from my lover's eyes, I'm beginning to give myself permission to pat myself on the heart for perpetually living in the eye of the torrent, for standing still with the torment on every side, for the nights that sleep runs right through me and I find it hard to hide the thinning hair and wonder where all of this weight came from. I refuse to give in to the remorse of being this big any longer, to swallow the idea that at any moment I can vermilion into insignificance. It's so easy to see yourself as a failure when your body is failing you, and I'm tired of stockpiling the shame, of the mocking clothing, of pinching myself in the mirror every morning and feeling I have something to justify. Like the mercury rising in my skin is not enough. But there is a boiling point for every makeshift glass of a woman where the corsets and medical bracelets fall off and she's forced to give in to all her unreliable life is left behind. It's time. It's time I stare myself in the looking glass, see nothing less than this wide-load majesty, this self-love time around. I won't fear the weight of remission, won't hold on to my next flare like it's a lifeline for my longevity. I will give into this mine car shaft and ride the rails of my own waistline. There may be a hymn waiting at midnight, so I will revel in every 11:59. Every trepidatious trip to the throne room, I will step weighty and heavy, make sure everyone knows where I have been hasn't always been fit, but it has fit me like a righteous scar. I do declare, this disease will not own me or define me. I am a proud glutton for life in every role. Every chance to show that I love handling more of myself in my own arms is a testimony I haven't succumbed. Every pound says, I'm still willing to fight off the cat of 9 tails that lives in my intestines. I have been ripped out but not desecrated. There is still a holy somewhere in me looking for a vessel big enough to engorge, and I am an acre of good soil. I am lush. I am sumptuous. I am not cured. I may never be cured, but I'm following the bloody breadcrumbs back to myself. Being slim and sickly has nothing on voluptuous and vibrant. I am vibrant, full-bodied, rich, complex, doubtful, triumphant, shaky yet substantial, voluminous, and full. I am full, y'all. I am full. I am so full.